All right, this is my individual oral, and for this oral, I'll be analyzing two texts. The first text is called We the People. It's a famous poster by Shepard Fairey from 2017, and the second text is a poem called Home by Warsan Shire, and that's from a similar time in history, 2016. So during this time, immigration and the fear of immigrants, those were big issues around the world. They played a big role in determining the Brexit vote and the Trump vote in the US presidential elections. So I selected these texts because they're really different. Not only are they really different text types, but they also look at different aspects of immigration, which I'll be exploring here. So We the People uses illusion, color, and symbolism to argue that America should be more open-minded. And Home uses repetition and imagery to make readers understand why immigrants immigrate in the first place. So I'm going to start with the We the People text by Shepard Fairey, and I'll talk about these three devices: symbolism, color, and illusion. And I think Shepard Fairey uses these three devices to make viewers think more about what makes America America. It's a country of immigrants, as you know, and this text reminds people of just that. The woman depicted in this image is a Muslim woman with her headscarf, and the headscarf is made from an American flag. It reads underneath, We the People, and it says we are greater than fear. The poster is Shepard Fairey's political message, and his statement is basically that America should welcome immigrants and it should not let fear dictate politics. So to start with the use of color, the reds and blues are probably the first thing the viewer notices when they see this image. Most people in the US would have recognized these colors from the Obama posters that appeared in 2008. They were also created by Shepard Fairey, by the way. But this We the People poster borrows a lot of those same structural elements from the Hope poster. So back then, in 2008, when Fairey created the Obama poster, he used this two-tone style photo of Obama to make him look really iconic. And Obama had once said that there were no red states or blue states, but only the United States. And he did that, I think, to pitch himself as the moderate candidate because, well, red stands for Republican Party and blue stands for the Democratic Party. And now he's using the same reds and blues again, and I think this is his way of saying that America needs more moderation in this debate on immigration. So it's like he's reminding everybody of the hope that was promised during the Obama era, and he's saying that they should still be hopeful and balanced in this debate on whether America should allow for more immigrants, especially from Muslim countries. So besides using reds and blues, Fairey also uses a lot of symbolism. The flag is probably the most predominant one you see here, but it's also a headscarf, and that's quite interesting. Muslims are a real minority in the United States, and sometimes, unfortunately, they're associated with terrorism. I think this has a lot to do with anti-Islamic sentiments that came about after 9/11. It's kind of sad that they are perceived this way. It's exactly the line of reasoning that I think that Shepard Fairey is trying to challenge by creating this poster. He's saying that it is possible in a country of immigrants for Muslims, a minority, to be pro-American. And the use of this headscarf, by conflating the two images, the headscarf and the American flag, he's achieving this purpose. So this leads up to the last thing that I'd like to say about this poster, which is that there's a lot of allusion to the U.S. Constitution. It says, We the people are greater than fear. And we the people, those lines are taken from the Constitution. They're used by the Founding Fathers as a way of showing that Americans and America stood for independence, freedom, democracy, and justice. It was a nation of the people, by the people, for the people. So to pair this phrase with the Muslim woman wearing the headscarf is very inclusive. It shows that she too should be included in the American dream. And the second phrase, are greater than fear, it's not taken from the Constitution, but it's an interesting twist for the reader. It makes you wonder if fear is driving American politics at the time during the Trump elections. So there was a lot of fear-mongering going on, and I think he's added this phrase, we are greater than fear, in order to persuade voters not to give in to fear-mongering. So to conclude this part of my individual oral, I'd like to say that Shepard Fairey has created this poster to challenge fear and bigotry in American politics in the year 2016. And he uses these reds and blues from the iconic Hope poster, and he uses symbolism to achieve these purposes, and illusion as well. So the second text that I'd like to analyze is the poem by Warsan Shire from 2016. And this poem, or the poet, she's a daughter of Somalian immigrants, and she's born in Kenya, and she moved from a very young age to the United Kingdom with her parents. So this poem, like a lot of her poetry, is more about people that she knows rather than about herself. She uses a lot of repetition and imagery to make readers empathize with immigrants and to understand the hardships that they have to endure. The title of the poem, I'll start with that, Home, it's repeated throughout the poem as a kind of anchor point, and it's certainly a word that's repeated a lot. Home has interesting connotations. Most people might think of something warm and homey or a friendly place, but here she's using it with reference to a shark. Home is the mouth of a shark, and home is scary. It's a threatening and dangerous thing throughout this poem. And I think she does that as a form of juxtaposition, really, to make the reader think about why someone would want to leave home. And if it is a scary monster, then it would make sense in that context. So the other word that's repeated a lot is no one. And it serves a purpose to make the reader realize that refugees are just like everyone. It includes the reader, I suppose. And throughout the poem, it's emphasized that no one would endure these hardships of running away. And it says in line 31, unless the miles traveled means something more than the journey. Or no one would leave home unless, like it says in lines 24 to 34, unless they want to spend days and nights in the stomach of a truck, or put their children in a boat, or burn their palms under trains, or crawl under fences, or be beaten, or choose refugee camps. So the repetition of this no one in combination with these hardships really stresses to the reader that the refugees don't have a choice. Readers realize, I think, that through this use of repetition, that refugees are just like everyone, actually. They make the same choices that the reader would make if they were put into these dangerous situations. Besides the use of repetition, the author also uses a lot of imagery and figurative language to make readers empathize with refugees. This imagery is paired with the second person you quite frequently, so that the reader can imagine what it's like to be in the refugee's shoes. For example, in lines 3 to 11, there's a certain picture that's painted in the mind of the reader. She says, "You only run for the border when you see the whole city running as well. Your neighbors running faster than you, breathe bloody in their throats. The boy you went to school with, who kissed you dizzy behind the old tin factory, is holding a gun, bigger than his body." So this use of language in hyperbole appeal to the reader's visual senses, and as you can imagine, there's like a flood of people running away from this angry teenager boy, and he's got this giant gun. And strangely, he's the same boy that you once kissed behind this old factory. There are actually lots of other examples of imagery from this poem, but I see I'm running out of time here. So to wrap things up, Warsan Shire uses both imagery and repetition to explain to her reader why refugees run away from home in the first place. And she uses imagery to show the reader the kinds of hardships that immigrants have to endure. This poem, hopefully, makes readers empathize more with immigrants and refugees. So that concludes my presentation part of my individual oral.
Okay, thank you. That was great. I think you've chosen two interesting texts to discuss here, and you're right, immigration is a very topical discussion. Let's talk about the first text, the one with the American flag as a headscarf.
Sure.
You said that America was a country of immigrants, and you suggested that she was an immigrant. Where in this poster do you see that she is an immigrant?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good question. I don't suppose it's very obvious, but you have to understand the context of the poster. It appeared alongside two other posters. One was an African American girl, and the other was a Latino girl. And there was a lot of talk about immigration during the Trump campaign, and this was Shepard Fairey's answer to that campaign. And well, yeah, I guess it's not obvious that it's about immigration, but I suppose Shepard Fairey is trying to yeah, create a certain contrast with the "Make America Great Again" campaign that Trump was using at the time. And whereas his ideas were really nationalistic, Fairey's ideas are really more about internationalism and open-mindedness. And I think that he was trying to make a statement about all of the anti-immigrant talk that was going on at the time.
Yeah, interesting. So it's more about diversity, really, than immigration?
Yeah, I guess.
No, that's okay. It's just interesting to see that they're connected.
Yeah, I think they are, because you see so many refugees leaving Islamic countries like Syria, and you kind of assume that she must have left an Islamic country too. And now she's in America, and she wants to be accepted there as a citizen. So this is probably, well, why she's wearing the American headscarf. As just a side note, I found out online that only 1% of the population of America is actually Muslim. So this poster makes a big statement. It's like saying that even the smallest of minorities count in the United States.
Yeah, and it ties in nicely to what you said about democracy earlier.
Yeah, true. I said that it uses the phrase "we the people." It's an allusion to the Constitution, and I guess it suggests that Americans have equal rights, and so does she.
That's interesting. And it makes sense, especially if it appeared alongside two other posters of minority groups, like you said. But before you go, I'd like to ask a few questions about the poem too.
Sure.
You said that repetition was used throughout the poem to make the reader experience the immigrants' hardships. As a reader, can you comment more on your experience reading the poem? How did it make you feel when you first read it? Or how did you feel when we listened to someone reading it in class?
Well, it's a really emotional poem, and when I first heard it, I thought, "Whoa, heavy!" It really hit me, like I was being punched.
Why do you think that was?
Well, I guess it's the language. It just sounds really harsh. It's not very poetic or lyrical. Words like refugee camps don't really roll off the lips. They don't sound poetic, I suppose. You don't hear that in poetry very often, refugee camps.
Yeah, you're right.
But I guess it's also the imagery. You can almost imagine this immigrant crawling under a fence, and you can imagine this immigrant tearing up her passport in the bathroom stall at the airport, and then she's trying to swallow it, and I just find that really gross. It feels awful. It's horrible. You can't imagine someone going through that situation, and that's probably why it hit me so hard. It's the tone of the poem, I guess, in the imagery.
Oh, I'd love to talk more about the tone of the poem, but I see it's time. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I mean it was an eye opener, I suppose. The poem. I hadn't really thought much about the whole immigrant experience, and I guess on TV, you see pictures of immigrants in boats and such, washing up on the shores of Greece and things. And this brings it to life. It kind of shows the whole journey that they had and that they have, and the hardships they have to experience. I found it really gut wrenching. Yeah.
No. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye.